I had a really good question that came out as a response to my long COVID recovery video, the third section of it, which is all about trauma. The lady asked, is it at all possible that neurodivergence could be a cause of trauma? And, you know, the reason why she was asking is because one of her kids isn't feeling very well at the moment. She's really tired, and a lot of the symptoms that her child is experiencing look a lot like chronic fatigue. And she wondered if that might be because her nervous system was overloaded. It's a really good question, and the answer is yeah, unfortunately, yes. People who know me know that I've actually got two autistic children, both diagnosed, both with very different presentations. To understand trauma, there's a couple of things. One is it's different from having a bomb going off next to you, or a personal attack. This kind of trauma is it builds up on you, little things. In the same way that people of colour describe microaggressions, when people accidentally discriminate against you because they don't understand your condition, it can feel like that. Sometimes it's purposeful. I mean, you know, kids say what they're thinking, and that can hurt. Just to imagine for a moment that you live in a world where everybody else is different from you, where their experience of, say, the classroom environment is fun or nurturing or enjoyable. Your experience is that it's noisy and disinteresting, because maybe you've got a special interest and you're only interested in what you're interested in, that you find it hard to concentrate because you've got ADHD, or the way that people treat you just doesn't feel good, or it's just kind of slightly off. And it can come from the other children, it can come from teachers. I had a situation with my youngest recently where he came home in absolute tears, and he'd been in a classroom and one of the teaching assistants reacted to him having a meltdown by saying to him, "Big boys don't cry." And, you know, from him, his personal experience of that is, I can't control this dysregulation. This is something that I can't just stop. I can't control this. Not right now. I mean, he'll learn when he's older, but you can't right now. And the teacher, I'm sorry to say, shamed him. He was ashamed. And luckily, he has a really good friend. And that friend kind of talked him off the ledge at break time and told him that it was okay, but he still came home and had a super cry about it. And I had to make a complaint to the school, and they responded really well. I mean, they've instigated better autism training for all staff, not just the Senko, but it doesn't change the fact that experience was extremely disenfranchising. A feeling that you just don't belong, that what works for everybody else doesn't work for you, that all the other kids in the class are finding education that much easier. And then unfortunately it's also possible that it can come from parents, but in a different way, in a way that's loving, actually, in their minds. Imagine that instead of talking to my youngest about that in a way that's supportive and hearing him out and listening, imagine if you said something along the lines of, "I'm sure it wasn't that bad," or "there must have been a reason for it," or "you might be exaggerating." And it's not that you don't believe your child, you really do. You know deep down that your child has an autism diagnosis and they're going to struggle. But on some level, some parents do this because they find it hard to deal with the diagnosis themselves deep down. And there's a kind of a disconnect between the reality of how it is and the reality of how you would hope it would be. So you downplay how they're feeling about it. And that's really hard. It's really hard for your child to hear that, you know, I'm sure it wasn't that bad, or it's okay, they're there, rather than acknowledging that they have their feelings. So I'm not saying this to shame anyone, because we know, I know that I really struggled to accept some of the aspects of autism. I always knew they had autism, you know, from the very early days. You know, there's only so many times a teacher can pull you aside and say, your child had another meltdown in school today. You know, it's daily. Then there's a problem, right? So, as a parent, I try and combat that in the home. I talk very openly about how that misunderstanding between neurotypical people and neurodiverse can cause a disconnect between you, and that lack of understanding can make you feel outside of the system, and that it's okay to feel outside of the system because you are outside of the system. But I also talk to them about the great strengths that can come from autism. So I help them with their strengths and their weaknesses, and I try to give a balanced view, because I can't protect them their whole lives. I can only teach them that what people say about you is more a reflection of them than it is about you. And as they get older, they'll be able to advocate for themselves. And in the meantime, I advocate for them. But if I was to say, they're there, it's all right, or I'm sure that's not how it really went, then the ultimate result would be that my children would stop talking to me, and I would lose the ability to advocate for them. So that's what I do. I talk them through it, I help them understand, and I also help them to try to tell the difference between somebody who is maliciously doing it and somebody who is accidentally doing it, and to give people the benefit of the doubt. But where the doubt is no longer in place, to draw boundaries and set them and keep them. And that's it. And, you know, if you do have a child who's suffering from chronic fatigue or some kind of chronic thing, and you think they're autistic and you think they may be feeling disenfranchised, then, you know, I encourage you to get a diagnosis or talk to them about it and be real about it. Because only by talking about your feelings will you start to feel better. I hope that helps.